The circle of fifths versus the circle of fourths. This video is a companion to my main video on the circle of fifths. In the main video, I cover how the circle of fifths is built, the information that's usually attached to it, as well as all kinds of useful and interesting patterns that emerge on the circle. You might want to check it out if you haven't already. Even if you're already familiar with the circle, I bet you'll learn something new. And if you need to brush up on any of these concepts before you try to apply them to the circle, I did separate videos on most of them. This video is inspired by a number of comments on the first video that were confused about how fourths factor into the circle of fifths, and why it's sometimes called the circle of fourths. And I feel like I should mention that this is one of those things that's really pretty simple, but can still actually be really confusing. Like how some people get mixed up trying to work out time zones or daylight savings, or freeze when making change, especially if someone tries to make it easier by throwing pennies at you. For some people, this is a bit like that, but hopefully not by the end of this video. So let's jump in with a quick review of how the circle is built. In Western classical music, there are 12 distinct pitches named with one of 7 letter names, some with a flat or sharp symbol. Here's how they line up with the piano keyboard, and they just repeat if you keep going in either direction. The circle of fifths arises when we arrange these notes so that there's an interval of a perfect fifth between each note, like C to G, G to D, and so on, through all the notes until you return back to where you started. One way to demonstrate this is by starting on low C of the piano and going up a perfect fifth to G, then up another perfect fifth to D, and repeating the pattern over and over again until you come all the way back to C. Since this works on any starting note, bringing you right back to where you started, and it's the letter name that matters here, not any specific C or G or whatever, we can arrange the notes in a closed circle. As I observed in the original video, the structure of the circle of fifths is a bit like those drawings of impossible stairs, where you can keep going up or down, but eventually you'll end up arriving back in the same place. But instead of going up or down a stair as you go around, the notes go up a fifth clockwise and down a fifth counterclockwise. And this is the point where some people can get a bit turned around, the idea that the circle is up a fifth clockwise and down a fifth counterclockwise, which I guarantee is correct. But I've received so many similar comments that say it's a fourth counterclockwise, which is half true, or that if you go backwards, it's the circle of fourths, which is also only half true. Or some people even insist that the circle is not down a fifth counterclockwise at all, that it's actually down a fourth counterclockwise, which is just not true. So let's see if we can get this sorted out. Now, nobody disputes that C up to G is a fifth up. They're probably visualizing C on the piano and the G above it. That's a fifth up going one step clockwise on the circle. And if you simply turn around and go back one step counterclockwise from G down to C, that's a fifth going down. So far, so good. But then, they look over here and they see the C and the F, and it causes some confusion, because most people probably think of middle C and the F right above it, which absolutely is a fourth, and we'll address that in just a moment. But there's more than one F on the piano. There's another one down here, a fifth below middle C. So counterclockwise from C to F is a fifth down. And you can turn it around and go clockwise a fifth up from F up to C. Moving clockwise around the circle is always a fifth up, like C to G to D to A, and so on. And if we simply turn around the direction we came from and move counterclockwise, we move down in fifths, from A to D to G to C, and yes, down to F too. But fourths are also represented on the circle, and the circle is sometimes called the circle of fourths, which is also perfectly valid because fourths and fifths are inversions of each other. For instance, if we think of the notes C and G, they can either be a fifth apart or a fourth. You can start on C and go up a perfect fifth to G, or start on C and go down a perfect fourth to G. Both happen in music all the time. And it's the same for C and F. It can either be a fifth down or a fourth up depending on where you're starting and where you're going. If you're just talking about the letter names of C to G or C to F or whatever, the interval could be going in either direction. So the circle is both fourths and fifths in both directions. Clockwise, it's fifths up and fourths down, and counterclockwise, it's fifths down and fourths up. See how it's not super complicated, but it is kind of confusing? You can describe the circle in just a few words, but if you mix up any one of them, it's completely wrong. It's like trying to make chocolate chip cookies, but if you mix up the salt and the sugar, it's gonna be super gross. And it gets just a bit more confusing because there's also another version of the circle that's the same, but everything is backwards. It's like this Bizarro Mirror Universe Circle that has all the same stuff, but the letters are in reverse order, and that means that the rules about fourths and fifths as you move around the circle are backwards too. Some people call this version the circle of fourths, but is it really? Not really any more than the original circle is. Both circles represent fourths and fifths, clockwise and counterclockwise, just in opposite directions. So they're both the circle of fifths and they're both the circle of fourths. In my experience, this version is more common, but both versions exist and you may see either one in the wild. So you might need to take a moment and confirm which version you're looking at. And so, that's the story of how the circle of fourths and the circle of fifths are related. I purposefully didn't spend too much time on this in the original video in the pursuit of minimal confusion for the maximum number of people. But hopefully, this satisfies people who need some clarification on the matter. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And be sure to check my channel in the description for more videos. Thanks for watching!